authentication microservice is running successfully. Now I would like to install packages for authentication. We're going to use Passport for authentication. We're also going to use Prisma client. So go ahead into package.json file, add couple of dependencies here. First one, I need Prisma client. Let's copy more. We also need NestJWT. Let's copy that. NestJWT. And we also need Nest Passport. Let's copy that. And we also need, I think, Passport in Passport JWT. Yes, that's all for now. Go ahead and run npm install to install the authentication related dependencies. My dependencies have installed. Now it's time to define the routes for authentication. Client sends the login or sign up request to the API gateway, and then API gateway will forward that request to appropriate authentication service. Just like we did for riders and rider coordinates, I can create a separate section and I can say auth. We don't have any guard right now, but I'll teach you how to do with that. So we defined the register route. It should be sign up. You can call sign up, or I just call register. It's a login route. It's a profile route. Now we need to define the authentication service. In our previous videos, we used the same API gateway service for rider to interact with rider coordinates, logging microservice and rider microservice. When you open the API gateway service, here we are using the rider service or rider coordinates. You can follow the same approach for authentication service if you want, or you can create a separate service that will have logic related to authentication. However you want to do. Let's create a separate service for authentication to interact with authentication microservice. Inside, you should go to the authentication service. Actually, I have to go into the apps directory and open the integrated terminal. Not here, inside the API gateway. And I can generate a service. I can say auth. Inside the gateway, I will have the auth service. I will define register login method here inside the auth service. Now we need to inject the auth service into API gateway controller, just like we did API gateway service, auth service. Now we need to define these methods. These methods will interact to authentication microservice. What I can do, I can copy my authentication service code. Actually, I need to place that inside the source directory. Now you can see that you learned how I implemented that. I already taught you. We have set the auth queue inside the authentication microservice. Inside the main.ts, we set the auth queue. We are using RabbitMQ based transport. Here we have register method, API gateway auth service user. It's gonna call register command inside the authentication microservice. It's gonna call login command inside the authentication microservice. Same case for validate token. Everything is fine now. In the next video, we're gonna define these commands like this one: register command, login command, and validate token command. Now we have to implement this register message pattern command in our authentication controller. I have already taught you how to do that. I can copy register, login, and validate token, and I can paste them here. Let's import dependencies. It's authentication service, or I can call auth service. We don't have register method. This register method will interact our database. All right. We will use Prisma here. Let's say I can log some data called auth service register method. Or you can log the data. Get rid of get hello. Now what I want to do, we defined routes in an API gateway. When I call this API endpoint, when I send request to the auth/register, it's gonna call the register method from the auth service in the API gateway, right? And this API gateway, this one, it's gonna trigger register command to the authentication service here, and inside here, inside the authentication controller here, register with data, and here we are calling the register method in the auth service. That's the complete flow. We need to test that. In the next video, we'll test the register command. Make sure all of your microservices are running. You can change the name of your terminal if you're using VS Code. I got the error. Auth service is not in the provider. So let's provide the auth service. Make sure you imported the auth service from the API gateway, right? Let's check. Auth service is not defined inside the main.ts file. What is this? Let's restart the project. Oh, I think I did not save the application. Let's open the rest.http. Here we need to send the auth routes. Actually, we need to send the authentication request. Localhost :3000 auth/register. Content type application JSON. Let's send the email. Let's send the password. What is that? Internal server error. Error on element API gateway auth service user. Let's log or debug step by step. Inside the API gateway controller, it ran the register. Inside the auth service, we got the register and we got the user, right? Successfully connected to RMQ broker, but what is the issue? It should log the message. Let's go to the authentication controller. From the authentication, it did not, I think, receive the data in the authentication. Oh, it received the data in authentication controller, data in register auth controller, and inside the auth service we get the register. And actually I found the issue, we did not resolve the value. That is why we got the issue. We are not returning anything from here. If you return something, let's say data, it should be fixed. Yeah, we got the response back from the authentication microservice. So our microservice communication are working fine for API gateway and authentication. In the next video, we're gonna use Prisma ORM here. Here we would like to save the user details in the database. We're gonna use Postgres database, and this time we will use the Prisma ORM. You have learned how to use the type ORM in the previous videos. Now it's time to learn the Prisma ORM. Now it's time to set up the Prisma in our authentication microservice. There is a simple command npx prisma init. It's gonna set up the Prisma in our authentication project. It will create Prisma folder and .env file. Now you should see the Prisma folder inside the authentication. Oops. Where it did created, it created in the root directory because I did not navigate into the authentication. I should go to the authentication and run npx prisma init. Get rid of Prisma from here. I don't need that. We also need to remove .env file. Now you should see the Prisma folder. We will define all our schema here in a single file, schema.prisma file. We are using Postgres, and you gotta define your database here in the env file. In the next video, we're gonna define database for our authentication. We will also create Prisma client by using npx prisma generate. To generate Prisma client, it will generate querying for database. Actually, it will generate TypeScript typing for us. It will also create a Prisma client, Prisma service class to interact with database. In the previous video, we have connected Prisma in our authentication microservice. We have created schema.prisma file. You will place all of your models in a schema.prisma file. We also have .env file. Here you will place your Postgres connection string. Let me copy that and let me paste it. We're going to use Postgres. It's my username, it's my password, this is the host, I'm using localhost, and this is the port, and this is the DB name, and schema is equals to public. I already shown you in a previous microservice how to connect with Postgres. So if you open the Docker Compose file, you should see this username and password in Postgres. We have Postgres user, we have a password which is root. I use the riders DB, but you can also define your auth DB as many DBs you want. This is the name of the DB. We have set the port 5433. This is our machine port. We are mapping to the Docker container 5432, which is the default port of the Postgres. We would like to map to 5433. Now it's time to define the model in a schema file. You can define in this way model user. In this, user will be converted to Postgres table, and these will be converted to table columns. ID, they have provided the add default. Auto increment, please increment the ID. I don't need to increment the ID. You have to do it. I'm telling to Postgres. So ID is the default auto increment, and it's an ID. It should be unique. In email, I also used another constraint, unique. The email should be unique, and the type of email which is string. And we have the password, and the type of the password is string. There are a couple of data types in Prisma. You can look up the Prisma documentation. When you search Prisma data types, you will find all of the data types in Prisma. Now our next step is to convert into class, so I can access CRUD operations.